The following is a conversation. It has the features of any conversation, such as imperfectly expressed thoughts, ill-considered opinions, and the notions of several sleep-deprived brains. Try not to get your stethoscope in a twist about it.
Maddie, have you always had bangs?
No, but I have for a few months now.
Sometimes I wonder if I want bangs, but I'm afraid.
I immediately loved them. I haven't styled them today.
So your hair just falls like that? Like you just wake up and you look like that?
Yeah. I mean, I straightened them yesterday, but it literally takes, 4 seconds. It's not a big commitment.
The bangs just feel really sciencey to me. You know, like I can trust you to know your stuff.
Thank you so much.
Give science.
It's the bangs glasses combination that is giving scientist, I think.
It is. Yes. And the tattoo.
The tattoo is giving science?
Yes, it is.
It gives lab scientist vibes.
I love it. I'm not a lab scientist, but I'll take it.
Meandering in the margins of medicine, it's the Shortcoat Podcast.
Weird news,
fresh views,
helpful clues, and interviews.
By students, for students.
Subscribe to our weekly show at theshortcoat.com.
Welcome back to the Shortcoat Podcast, the show that gives you an inside look at medical school from the students drinking from that fire hose. It is, in fact, a production of the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine. I'm Dave Etler. With me today from the internet, I feel like it's pandemic times all over again because they're all on Zoom. It's M3 Jeff Goddard.
Holy crap. Yeah, you can call me an M3 now. How about that?
I mean, I'm promoting you a little early, but it's fine.
By the time this comes out, you're dead on.
I mean, we've also got M2 Fallon Jung.
I have an M2.
She's joining us from our satellite offices in Alaska, and we've got MD PhD student Maddie Walline.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me on this Zoom situation. So, Fallon, tell us about Alaska.
Well, it's the 49th state. We bought it from Russia.
Oh.
Let's see. It was bought after 1865. The year I am not entirely remembering, but that's okay. It was after 1865. It is more beautiful down south. Maybe this is a hot take, but I think that like Denali is very pretty, but all of the stuff south of Denali is like always pretty. I have seen more wildlife in Canada than we have in Mexico. We've seen 3 moose here. And I think that's... Well, technically I've seen 5 moose, but Zach has only seen 3.
He doesn't count.
1867.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were going to get a lot of listener feedback on that inaccuracy. They were going to write in, "You got it wrong. I'm unsubscribing."
Oh, no, not wrong. I just said after 1865. 1867 is indeed after 1865.
Have you been on the internet, Fallon? Have you seen the kinds of internet fights people get into? I'm always worried about that. It never happens.
Not to do that. I don't like it when people yell at me in person or over the internet. So sometimes I look at our YouTube comments and people are really rude.
It's weird.
It works.
YouTube is a weird place.
I just don't even know why some people say the things that they say.
You're talking about your YouTube comments on your and Zach's channel.
Yes.
Yeah, I will say YouTube comments in like the late aughts, like 2007, 2008. That was where you went to like really test your mettle as a person. Like, can you survive these comments? It was dire.
Not me.
I can't imagine it's gotten any better.
It hasn't.
I don't know. I thought there were some bangers in the YouTube comments back then, though.
Sure.
One of our inside jokes between my husband and I is on the Creed song, My Sacrifice. One of the YouTube comments, like the top comment, just says Mike Sacrifice. It's dumb, but I think it's hilarious.
Oh. Anyway, and the bugs?
The bugs are really bad.
I hear the bugs are bad.
2 nights ago, Zach and I splurged on getting a campsite. It was a $35 campsite, mostly because we had chicken that was starting to go bad. We were like, we need to cook this chicken.
Yeah.
And there was definitely a possibility that we were going to get food poisoning, but we risked it anyhow. And so far, nothing has happened. Knock on wood.
That's good.
Anyway, so we cooked the chicken to make sure that hopefully we didn't get food poisoning. Although with the amount of char on it, maybe later we'll get colon cancer. I am not sure. It was really buggy outside. And every time we went outside, bugs would get in, but we'd close the door really quick. Anyway, and we thought that we killed all the big mosquitoes. And we were like, oh my God, like what are these tiny little things? And they were baby mosquitoes. They were the smallest little things, and they got through a mesh on our, and when you smush them, they had blood in them.
Ew.
Anyway, and so it was horrible.
Otherwise, you guys are having a good time. Let's not complain too much.
Sorry.
You're on a journey.
I am.
I would recommend going to their YouTube channel.
That's just Zach and Fal.
Go to their YouTube channel. Well, look at their adventures. It's so fun. I don't know.
You're very kind.
I want to remind our listeners that we are super excited to hear from you, to offer you advice about medical school, from getting into graduating, take suggestions about topics that we can bring you. So what I want to know is, what do you want to hear? So go to theshortcoat.com/tell us. Help us make this show your show. It's not easy coming up with ideas on my own, and you help to make the show what you want it to be about. A listener called Neurotic Pre-Med, because that's exactly what he told me his name is, got in touch with us. Thanks, Neurotic Pre-Med. He's about to start medical school, and he has questions about what will be for him a long-distance relationship.
Hello. Thank you all for everything you do. I'm currently in a long-distance relationship with my girlfriend, as we're both going to different professional schools. I was wondering if any of y'all have any experience with maintaining these types of relationships, romantic or platonic, and what advice you'd have. Also, is there ever a good time to get married and have kids in medical school, or is it better to wait until residency? Thank you again.
You're very welcome.
That sounds like you just artificially raised your own voice.
That's exactly what it is.
And I love that for you.
It is a real, of course it's a real listener question. I don't usually pretend. It's an AI voice made with me. I was aiming for old prospector, but the AI voice just turned it into my voice, but higher.
Yeah, I think it
I
is.
appreciate that.
I'm an old prospector. That's what I was going for.
Back in 1849.
Yes.
So I have some experience with this. I have completed 2 years of medical school. My wife and I applied to medical school at the same time 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I guess. And through bad planning on my part more than her part, she just kind of trusted me, and she shouldn't have, but oops, my bad. We are now going to medical school 1,000 miles apart from one another. So, and we have a small child, and another one on the way. So 2 years in, yeah, we're making it work. It's not the most thrilling. Obviously, I prefer spending time with her than any member of my medical school class. They're okay, but they're just not as cute as she is.
Yeah.
But you can make it work. One, we save up money so that we can travel to visit each other as often as we can. We also do some of the other, some of the main stuff we do in medical school, just the study stuff. We'll spend 8 hours FaceTiming on a Saturday just studying, because that's what we would be doing anyway. Why not be able to look at each other's face while we're doing it, Little things like that, making time for calls and making each other feel like we're actually fully integrated into each other's lives. 2 years later, we're doing great. Again, I would prefer to be with her, but it is definitely possible to do this at a distance.
Here's what I've learned about myself over the years. And I'm talking about all relationships, with the exception of my wife. So I guess I'm talking about platonic relationships.
Almost all relationships.
Almost all relationships, the more platonic ones. It's not that I forget that other people exist, but it's that it's hard for me to remember that those relationships also need a little input from time to time. And I remember a friend in college, way back in college, telling me, "You're a love the one you with kind of guy." And I had no idea what that meant to her. But now I feel like I know that it means you basically sometimes forget that other people would like to hear from you and give them a call. So I guess I would counsel Neurotic Pre-Med to think about that. They may not have the same problem I have. I also feel like anybody who doesn't see me on a daily basis probably doesn't care to hear from me anyway. Ew, gross. Dave Etler. Ugh. But I don't think that's really true. That's just anyway. Think about that, neurotic pre-med.
I would make the point that my wife and I have talked about this quite a bit. Like the opportunities that you have to experience the intimacy of other couples, like to be able to see how other people do intimacy, is almost all media, right? Like you don't actually watch your parents have like an in-depth conversation.
Oh God, I'm so glad you went there.
The only time that you really get to see those like behind the doors conversations is when you're watching like a movie or a show, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for a lot of friendships. If you're comparing your friendships to like, I don't know, Sean Spencer and Burton Guster on Psych, or, you know, some other like group of friendships, like say it's like New Girls or whatever. If you're like, oh, I want my friends to be like that. Well, turns out you don't live with your friends, right? Like you don't live right across the hall from Monica and Rachel. So the only way you can have these friends is to stop trying to compare yourselves to something that's fiction and try to intentionally build it for yourself. But unfortunately, you don't get the opportunity to see what that looks like, right? Like I can't follow Fallon around and see like how she interacts with other people to get an idea of like, oh, this is how you make friends.
Can I just say that the fact that you brought up Psych is kind of amazing. Julie's,
I always wanted a best friend and I never had one. And I was like, where's my Burton Guster?
Yeah. Okay. My daughter and I are currently watching Psych. Actually, she's watching it more than I am. But yeah, we're definitely switching.
It's my happy show.
It's a great show.
It's so good.
So if you want friendships like that, and you haven't been fortunate enough to open up a pretend psychic detective agency with them, you have to be intentional about your relationships.
Spoiler.
That's literally
the whole
first
show. So
episode. That's the whole thing about the show. But you have to be intentional. You have to schedule time out. Like I do with my wife. You know, we're going to study Saturday mornings. That's like sacred time for us, right? But with other friends in my life, every Sunday morning at 8 a.m., I have an alarm that goes off that says, hey, call. And I have my list of people that I try to get through on Sundays to give them a call and check in on them, because the only way these friendships are going to be maintained is if I put in some effort, and I have to schedule it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
I think that there's a couple of things in what you just said that I think are really important when you're in medical school. One is, like scheduling. It doesn't have to be necessarily like an alarm on your phone like Jeff does, but that's great. For me, I would always, while I was walking my dog, because that was something I had to do anyway, that was like my phone call time. And I would call like my grandparents, I'd call my friends from home and things like that. So there was always that. And then the second thing is when you're on a break, like truly be on a break. So like winter break, there's not a lot that you get in medical school, but there is some time off. And so like when I would go home, I would make sure that I had, lined up some time to spend with my old friends. And then the last thing that I'll say about platonic relationships, you're going to make some really, really amazing friends in medical school too. And that's like, I don't know, that's like one of the really beautiful parts about medical school is it breeds such like deep friendships in a short amount of time, because you're all going through something very, very similar that not a lot of other people like have experienced. And sometimes it's going to be easier to relate to your medical school friends than it will be to relate to kind of your other phases in life friends. And like, that's okay. That's why you have a bunch of different kinds of friends.
I have great difficulty also talking on the phone.
Oh, I love talking on the phone.
How do you do it? Like, I get nervous about silence.
Uh-huh.
Very nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start talking to fill it with nonsense.
Oh, yeah. And then I just start, and they don't respond well. Or like they don't like match your energy when you're trying to like fill in some space. And
like, what's wrong with a comfortable silence on the telephone?
I actually like got over this because, well, not really got over it, but I actually really hate like one-on-one calls.
Yeah.
But I'm just really online because all of my friends are long distance.
Sure.
My partners are long distance.
Yeah.
So we do like a lot of parallel, just like hanging out in the same voice call, which I absolutely like think is great to just be in the same presence.
I love the idea that Jeff and his wife hang out on FaceTime, because again, I think of it as like a way to communicate, not necessarily as a way to just be in the same even virtual space together. I think that's amazing. And probably this is something people are way more used to than old me, but love that.
I am in a long distance relationship with my fiance. We started off long distance for 1 year because the day before graduation of both our undergraduate programs, we decided we'd start to date, and then he moved the next day.
Timing is everything.
Yeah, but we were really good friends and we made it work. And during that time actually was before I got like therapy or like treated for anything. So like I was all kind of like solo self-taught coping mechanisms and stuff like that. And he had like an incredible amount of patience for me like going through it. And then 1 year passes, he moves for work closer to me. And then I have to go to PA school in Iowa. But it's something we've done before. We spend like a lot of time online, and it's been a lot of like managing your own feelings of like loneliness and wanting to be there together 24/7, but we can't. So it's been like really, really crucial that like we both know how to live without each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are some couples where one or the other has trouble with the idea that the other person might not be there all the time. I mean, I feel like that's just human nature for some people. You know, it's to be apart. So yeah, ideally, neurotic pre-med's going to have a long series of conversations about what it looks like to be apart.
And what I find is like extremely important is that like we both have friend groups outside of each other. And like meet people outside of the relationship, because I found that like during some times when I wasn't really feeling a part of any groups or feeling kind of like isolated from people in real life, or like locally, I would be a lot more needy, a lot more demanding of my partner to fill in gaps that he could not fill for my social needs. So, and I think it's impossible for one person to fill all of your social needs.
Yeah.
So just like being accepting that sometimes it's not that they're not there enough, it's that I need to reach out to other people for support.
Yeah, totally.
I think it also requires like a lot of planning and a lot of like, if you know that you're going into a long distance relationship, those are just conversations you have to have beforehand. I'm actually preparing to enter a long distance relationship with my husband. He's moving to Des Moines. And that's something that we have talked about is, you know, how are we going to make sure that we are still communicating throughout the week when I'm here and he's there? And how often am I going to be able to go to Des Moines? How often is he going to be able to come back to Iowa City? Things like that. And it's only 2 hours, so that's not like the biggest deal in the world, but it's taken a lot of conversations to kind of plan for how that's going to look.
It is so hard to find things to do together when you're not physically together. Hence, a lot of the times my quote unquote like quality time with my fiance is we are sitting in the same video call. He's playing a game, I'm playing a game, I'm studying, he's doing crafts, he's watching something.
But that is also living together.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how this works for
like,
Fallon
window.
right now. I feel like Fallon and Zach are all up in each other's grill. But when you when you live together,
Zach is in bed right now.
Hi, Zach.
Hi.
Yeah, but I feel like, you know, unless you're in that situation, maybe even when you're in that situation, there are plenty of opportunities to be in the same place and have sort of parallel but not intersecting interactions, you know?
But oh my gosh, when we do get to like be together, it is so amazing. Sometimes I'll be like, we'll be doing the same thing, like parallel, hanging out in real life together. And then I'll like think like, man, I really wish I could see him right now. And then I'm like, I can.
He's right over.
Touch. It's like the best thing. And maybe it adds a little bit of variety. It makes it like more special that when we do have time together to really appreciate each other's presence.
I wanted to do our monthly health news roundup this month. Chinese.
I recently had the longest phone call of my life, and it's not because of this side of the phone. On the subject of like making sure that you're checking up with people frequently. It had been a few years, and your boy got talked to for 7 hours. It was like 4 a.m. I was like literally falling asleep. I'm like, bro, I know that you need to catch up with me, but I'm so tired. But it was a good conversation, but also like it was not because I could talk for 7 hours. That was a lot.
How?
Yeah,
he had a lot to say.
He had a lot to say, and Jeff probably didn't have to say very much on his own, sounds like.
I really didn't. Sometimes you're the giver, sometimes you're the taker, and in this situation, he just needed to take some, and I had some to give, so it was fine.
Jeff, Do you think your wife is overloaded with parenting because you're here and she's there?
See, that's the trade-off, so it's been 2 years in here, right? And we're going into a stretch with a newborn baby. Fortunately, we have some extra resources. I got a pretty substantial scholarship to medical school. A lot of that money goes towards paying for a live-in nanny to help out. But at the end of the day, the trade-off was, would you rather be the parent that gets to see your child on breaks only, or the parent that has to be there always? And that's a very difficult trade-off when, as a family, we decided to live 1,000 miles apart, right? But it would have been much more difficult to ask a mom to say, hey, you can see your kid on fall break, than it is to say, hey, you kind of have to be a single parent right now, and I'm going to do my best at a distance, but this is where we're at,
Yeah.
So she chose the more physically taxing, but emotionally much more satisfying part. And here I am just waiting to see my little one.
Yeah.
Who I get to see next Friday, so.
Oh.
That's fun. Anything planned?
We're going to catch the new one. So my wife is 39 weeks pregnant today. Yesterday.
Oh, I thought you meant you were just visiting.
Also that.
I imagine he will visit.
I was so I had the weirdest image of she's coming over here and then just have your hands out ready.
That's basically it. My son runs off the plane, runs into my arms, and then coughs into my face.
Love that. Kids have a big cough energy on planes, for sure.
So strong.
What do we think about the timing aspect of having kids in medical school versus residency? Is there a good time?
So I have big feelings on this as somebody who has a child before medical school started and is about to welcome a new child into the world. And the caveat is, of course, I am not pregnant. I didn't have to do that part. My wife just she's at a DO school, so she took level 1 for COMLEX, which is the DO board certification, and step 1, both while she was 38 weeks pregnant, within 4 or 5 days of each other.
So she's a badass.
Yeah, there never, for the rest of our lives, will I ever do anything as cool as the person that she just exists as every day. Taking step 1 while you're 38 weeks pregnant is not exactly ideal. But at the same time, there's never a good time to have a child. Earlier is better because you will have more resources as a medical student than you're going to have in residency. You're going to have more access to, days off or parental leave or whatever as a medical student than you will as a resident. My son is 8, so 6 when I started medical school. He was starting school and I was starting school at the same time. That's a challenge, but at the same time, better then than when he's 12 and he's okay, see you in 4 years, Dad. So I don't think that it's something that you should, if it's something that's really important to your goals to be a parent, I don't think that it's really worth waiting until you get to some idealized state. It's never going to get easier. It's only going to get harder from here. So go ahead and do it now if it's something that you want to do.
This is something that I think a lot about and that I have sought advice from a lot of mentors on this issue. And I feel the resounding advice, especially from women in medicine, is that there's never a right time. So the right time is when you're ready, when you and your partner are both ready. I think that's obviously the most important thing. That is, I think what Jeff said is really, really salient. It matters. You should think about what your life's going to look like at X stage. But I feel there isn't a right time. There's not a perfect time. And so whatever is right for you whenever you're ready, I think that's the right time, because there's not going to be a time in training that's absolutely perfect, no matter how perfectly you try to plan it. Because first of all, you can't always get pregnant when you want to.
I was going to say,
and
sometimes
secondly,
you get pregnant when you're not planning to. So
exactly. And you're always going to be busy. You're going to be busy in medical school. You're going to be busy in residency. You're going to be busy when you are out of residency. There's not a right time, which means that every time is the right time.
Having gone to several women in medicine conferences and heard the responses from women attendings that have gone through all of this, there might be a wrong time, and this isn't what life should be but that it's just the nature of the beast. Being pregnant during residency interviews can sometimes lead to bias in them selecting you, which is obviously problematic, but a real thing. So if you can at all have any influence over when you're being actually pregnant, during the interview trail is a difficult time.
I feel that's different now, though, that we're virtual. All interviews are pretty much virtual these days.
Yeah.
And if I were pregnant right now, you couldn't tell.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. I guess the other thing is too, like, I mean, obviously, like, bias exists and, like, bias is, like, a big issue, but at the same time, you will immediately see people's values and that program's values if they are more or less discriminating against you because you're pregnant, right? Because like the problem, like you probably don't want to be part of a program anyhow that is not going to support you if you're pregnant. That's my thought, at least, or at least that would be what I would choose or not choose.
Yeah, we've had this conversation in the past about things like mental health issues. Should I talk about my mental health issues, which I feel like are an important part of me? Should I talk about my religious values, which I feel like are an important part of me? Should I talk about, X, Y, or Z that has the potential to cause bias or has the potential to be affected by bias, but which are important to me? And yeah, it's a risk calculation that you have to make. And it's totally valid to say, yeah, I'm going to take that risk because this is important to me, and I will find out whether or not this program that I'm applying to will accept me or not. And if they don't, screw it.
Actually going through it, and I think that like you need to be in a kind of mental state where like you're able to not take it so internally.
Yeah.
And like I always thought like it was extremely like shitty how it feels like we're always looking for like a window of opportunity to possibly like do family planning and have a child, and you have to consider like it feels like survival to me, but I have PTSD, so like everything feels like survival.
Sure.
But it really feels like survival in terms of like, is it safe for me like socially to have a baby at this time?
Yeah.
And I think that it's also important to recognize that like I have prospects, right? And the field that I'm going into isn't necessarily the most competitive field of medicine, so I'm not like as concerned. But I could see the argument where somebody could say like, yeah, this program might be discriminatory against me for being pregnant or whatever, but also it's the only program in the specialty that I'm interested in the state where my family lives. And like that makes it like I have to do everything I can to maximize my chances. Otherwise, life's going to be extra hard for me. So I get that too.
Yeah. That's what I mean. You got to make that calculation for yourself and decide where you fit on that spectrum of like, I don't give a shit. Oh my God, this is the most important thing.
Yeah. Like I can jump through their hoops. I can play their game because I need to at this point. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it assumes that you have options if you can.
Right.
Of their biases.
Yep. So neurotic pre-med, I wish you the best of luck. And also your long distance relationship, and I hope it all goes smoothly. It probably won't. Long distance relationships are hard, and I don't want to be too Pollyanna about that.
Good movie.
Is it a movie?
Pollyanna?
Oh my God! Yeah.
Pollyanna?
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
And maybe
I
a
read
book.
it as a book.
Oh. Maybe I knew that. I don't really know.
It adds a little bit of variety. It makes it like more special that when we do have time together to really appreciate each other's presence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have we answered neurotic pre-med's questions? I
think so.
Good luck. I wanted to do our monthly health news roundup. This month, Chinese researchers have cured a man's diabetes. Ozempic is coming for the sugar industry, and Florida is making what looks to little old me to be a risky move in women's health. So we'll start with the diabetes cure. The promise of stem cell treatment is something researchers have talked about for a long time. And I think the holy grail is treating chronic conditions like diabetes using stem cells derived from patients' own cells, which would skirt the objections many people have about using embryonic stem cells or things like that, but also sort of avoid the whole donor rejection problem. So in a study conducted from the Shanghai Institute of Biochemistry and Cell Biology and published in Cell Discovery, researchers explored a promising new treatment using personalized endoderm stem cell-derived islet tissues.
Islet.
It's a pilot study aimed to improve blood sugar control and reduce the single patient's reliance on external insulin. But in this case, the patient was basically cured of his type 2 diabetes. After 11 weeks, he no longer required external insulin, and the patient has not needed any for going on 3 years now.
Only 11 weeks?
Yeah. Yeah, super, super cool. I mean, N of 1, who knows? But the fact that it's possible, as shown in this case, I think really should spur some additional work.
This is something we were actually talking about. I remember in undergrad, we were doing theoretical models for something very similar to this. Because, yeah, like physiologically, this makes sense that you would be able to pull this off. So obviously it takes a lot of work to get to the point where you can do it. But I'm really excited to see, not just with this autoimmune disease, but also many more autoimmune diseases, to see how we address these with stem cells and other interventions.
Is diabetes an autoimmune disease?
Type 1 is.
Okay. So this is type 2. Okay. I'm not certain. I think they're looking to see if this will be useful in type 1 diabetes as well. So I guess that remains to be seen. And there's obviously a lot of work to do.
Cool.
I think it's
cool as hell.
Personalized medicine. Is this what that falls under? I mean, I often think of genetics.
I mean, they use your stem cells, so one could say, yeah, sure.
It's pretty personal.
Yeah.
Pretty neat. Speaking of which, to me, so I don't know how you guys feel about Ozempic and all the GLP-1 medications. It seems like a bit overblown to me. Any thoughts on that?
What makes you think that it's overblown?
Well,
yeah,
I think losing 10 to 15 pounds doesn't seem like much. So as far as it being a miracle weight loss drug, I'm not so sure. It has some efficacy for increasing insulin production in type 2 diabetics. So that's, of course, very helpful. But, just like insulin right now, you have to get regular injections. So I guess that's better than every day for diabetics. But if you're just trying to lose weight, it just seems like not that important.
Are people using it only to lose weight and not for diabetes management?
Not only for, but
there are a lot of people that
it's gone crazy for people who want to lose weight. In fact, it's hard to get.
Sorry, I live under a rock, so I'm not really.
Well, that's why we're doing this, Julie.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be the.
You'll be slightly more informed in a way that I hope is not incorrect.
Here's the thing: people want to use it for weight loss. Like, it's approved specifically for diabetes management, and it is phenomenal at that. People want to use it for weight loss because we want quick fixes. This country, the world, but specifically our country, has been enamored by the idea of the magic bullet ever since penicillin came out. Yeah. We love the idea that, like, oh, you have an illness, take this pill and it'll go away. No work on your part. This just fixes it. Not everything can be fixed by medicine alone, but it is still very alluring to get we want to get excited about something that seems like it could do that.
I have a lot of thoughts about this, and I'm probably going to get them a little bit scrambled. But no, first thing, I want to go back to what Dave said about how, like, it doesn't seem that important if people are just using it for weight loss. And I would say that, like, because of the societal pressure that we have put on people to achieve a certain body size, like, losing weight for some people is very important. Like, that is very important to their health and how they feel about themselves and their body. Number one. Number two, I'll talk about quick fixes for people who have overweight or obesity. Losing weight is so hard. And, like, the number of people who, like, will try to lose weight time after time, like, it's a huge number of attempts per year for people. And people will lose weight and then they'll gain it back. And I think that's also a problem with Ozempic. But, like, to talk about losing weight as if people just don't want to do the hard work, like, I think that kind of trivializes how difficult it is to lose weight and how much people try and are motivated to lose weight and just can't get over the hump. And I feel like if this helps people get over that hump and, like, feel good about themselves, then it does. I think the bigger problem is that we have made people feel like they are only valuable as a person if they live in a small body. I think that's the major problem.
I would say that I agree with you that, like, obviously people are struggling with this. Heck, even me, like, I am obviously not a large body habitist, but I've been trying to lose about 15 pounds since I started medical school. And, like, good luck to me. I've been able to maintain, but I have not been able to lose those 15 pounds. And like, I bike everywhere. So like, I don't know, like I get that it's hard. And I think that anybody that's trying to lose weight understands that it's hard. The deck's stacked against them though. Like we also have to recognize that it's not just that it's like actually hard to lose weight. It's hard to lose weight when you don't have time to exercise. You don't have a place to exercise. You don't have access to healthy foods. It's not just like it's inherently hard, which it may or may not be. I think it is, but like it's also hard because the deck's stacked against them. But I think what I was really trying to get at is that the cultural excitement around it isn't just like somebody who has a larger body habitus that's trying to lose weight that's really excited about Ozempic. We as a country were excited about it. So many doctors were like, yeah, this is going to be the best way to help out my patients. This wasn't just the people that were not wanting to put in a lot of effort to lose weight that were excited about a quick fix. Everybody was excited about this being a more or less easy fix to the fact that weight loss is so difficult. That's kind of what I was really getting at.
And I think that's kind of why
I understand that.
That's kind of why I brought it up, because people have been so excited about it. And I don't want to yuck people's yums, but you still have to, when you take GLP-1 medications, you still have to incorporate lifestyle changes. Hopefully it makes that easier. But I could tell you from personal experience, I've had gastric bypass surgery and, I lost a lot of weight and then I gained much of that. Well, not much of it. I'm still 100 pounds under where I was, which is a great result, but it didn't make me skinny. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, you could talk about, lifestyle changes in addition to whatever medical intervention you're doing, but it seems to me even that question is super difficult. But the reason I bring this up is that it's powerful. Apparently, Ozempic and the other GLP-1 agonists are at least powerful enough to move markets. Analysts from Morgan Stanley predict that by 2035, up to 10% of the U.S. population might be using these drugs. And over 60% of U.S. consumers on these medications have reduced their intake of sweet treats.
Sweet rings a bell in you.
Yeah.
Pavlovian
sweet
response.
Treats. In 2023, GLP-1 drug sales exceeded $19 billion, with projections indicating the global obesity market could surpass $100 billion by decade's end. And this would potentially decrease calorie consumption by up to 2.5% and reduce intake of sweets by as much as 5%, which doesn't sound like much, but last October, the S&P Consumer Staples Index dropped after Walmart reported a decrease in consumer food purchases. Analysts, for instance, downgraded shares of Krispy Kreme. And Nestle is launching a new line of frozen foods specifically designed for users of GLP-1 drugs. So there's a little bandwagoning there, but there's also a little like, oh, holy shit, this is actually, doing something.
I do wonder or question if it's all because of the increased use of GLP inhibitors, because I've also noticed that the prices of all of these things have gone way really, really high. I used to, give myself a little Treato and get some chocolate.
A little Treato?
Yeah. Because, it's so much energy to go and get groceries and take care of myself. So just make things nice, get myself a little treat. Sometimes when the little treat that I remember being $1 has become $2 or $2.50, I'm like,
it makes you think.
It makes me feel so salty too, which is funny, salt. But because it's in my mind, this is worth $1.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good point happening.
I will also say that I think it's entirely fine to have the conversation around if I have a patient that comes in with a BMI of 27, I'm probably not actually super worried about that patient, even if by BMI standards that's overweight, right? And Ozempic would not be the right tool for them. Mm-hmm. But if you have somebody that has a BMI of 50, even 30 pounds is going to make a marked improvement to their overall health, their ability to get around, the strain that you're putting on their joints and muscles and bones, the strain that you're putting on their heart, the strain that you're putting on their organs. So there are advantages of every little bit helps. And if you're at the point where mobility is significantly affected by your body habitus, and there's a medicine that can improve on that, especially if it can help with the likely comorbidities of type 2 diabetes, I'm really supportive of that.
But if
that said, I don't know, like Julie said, I don't know that all of these effects that we're seeing are are just because of this medicine. I think the economy's just been kind of weird in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. But the whole thing about like if someone is having like joint issues and like they have like a very high BMI where they're having mobility, I do question like, because Ozempic, it doesn't like scale with how much weight is lost per person. So
what do you mean?
You're stating that, you know, from what I've learned from this podcast, that they'll lose about like 30 pounds. Or they could.
Yeah.
Possibility.
10, what did I say? 10 to 15 pounds.
Yeah, 10 to 15 pounds. But as a percentage of like their current weight that they have, wouldn't like a more... I feel like the difference wouldn't be so much with 10 to 15 pounds if there are ways that you can encourage, like if you need to lose like 100 pounds, for example, like if that's your goal, 10 to 15 pounds isn't 100. So why would you have them kind of bank on that?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
When like
hopefully, I mean, you know, as a provider, you know, you've got to have this conversation about like realistic expectations, which is an incredibly difficult conversation to process for the person who really wants to have their life change.
Just for some clarification, I'm looking at a page for the University of Columbia College of Medicine. It took me a second.
You did it.
A lot of the Ozempic and GLPs can have weight loss averages of 15 to 20%. So like it might be 30 pounds if you're, you know, 200 something, but it might be significantly more if you're larger body habitus. So
yeah,
it can be significantly life-changing. And again, its primary purpose is to help with diabetes, which is one of the reasons why we want obesity to not be so prevalent, is because it beats your body up to have uncontrolled diabetes, but it also beats your body up to have just extra inflammation. So
ain't that the truth? As I live in this 53-year-old broken down body.
Inflamed body.
Inflamed.
You know how like cars just get older and older and they lose value, and then all of a sudden they become classics and they start going up in value?
I'm hoping, I'm hoping for that period to come around real soon.
Might be a classic, Dave. I don't know.
Look at that guy. Like he may not have all the latest features, but he runs good, and I only have to put a few bucks in him every month to make him go. Florida has recently enacted a law allowing, quote, advanced birth centers where physicians can perform C-sections and vaginal deliveries for women at low risk of complications. This groundbreaking change aims to reduce costs and offer a homier birthing atmosphere. But not everybody's psyched about this. There are concerns about safety from the hospital industry and from obstetricians. This is a reaction to closing of maternity units in Florida hospitals. And this law allows these advanced birth centers to perform OB procedures for low-risk women with the intent to lower costs and offer, you know, a better birth experience. And these centers have to meet high standards, similar to outpatient surgery centers, and they have to have hospital transfer agreements in place. But the industry and obstetricians argue that these centers can't match hospital safety, especially in emergencies, which would potentially increase risks for mothers and babies. Apparently, this is the first state to allow C-sections outside of hospitals. I feel like OB is already sort of a high for the practitioners you're already at a high risk of getting sued.
Yep.
And so I just, you know, like if I had to like sit down as a risk averse person myself, if I was, you know, an obstetrician, I would have to like sit down and go, okay, does this put me at more risk of being sued because I'm doing this outside of a hospital?
Probably.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, of course.
So why would I do this? Why would I want to do this?
I would imagine that these are going to be like the people that tend to use birthing centers anyway tend to be people that are pretty hospital averse, right?
Yeah.
And I would imagine not really trusting of that system anyway. So I think that they would be more comfortable with practitioners that are willing to do it outside of the hospital. Mm-hmm. I'd also say that from personal experience with a lot of organizations that have loud voices, if the person who has the loudest voice in the room saying that something is dangerous is the person who financially benefits from not doing that thing, I am skeptical. So hospitals saying like, oh, birthing centers can't be as healthy as safe as hospitals. I'm like, yeah, you
But
make
you
money
close
off of that
maternity
opinion.
wards, so
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, they're not providing a lot of alternatives by closing maternity wards. So.
Yeah.
I just also think that like obstetric emergencies can come up even in the most low risk of patients. And so if you then have to wait to get them to a hospital, it just seems a little risky.
It's about it's 1 in 100 live births that you'll have a need for what we would call an obstetric emergency.
I have a hard time, like I know what those numbers mean, but I have a hard time translating those into some sort of.
Would you like me to say 1%?
I get it. Thank you. But I also like 1%. I want it to be 0. That's what my brain wants.
Yeah.
And even though I know 1% is not that much, it's like, but what if I'm 1%? And as a provider, that's not your risk. Your risk is, I don't know, is it 1%? If your math makes no sense to me. Is it still 1% or is it like higher? Like you're going to experience this problem.
Well, I mean, you could imagine that a provider would do more than 100 live births a month.
Yeah, yeah.
So their risk is already like almost like it's guaranteed that at some point they're going to see it.
Right.
You know, they're going to see it often.
Maybe.
But I will say, so I recently did the math and I corroborated it with PubMed, so I'm not just out here mavericking science.
Thank God somebody's researching the actual information.
Yeah, so the United States has doubled our maternal mortality since the year 2000. That's a bad thing, obviously. It's still significantly less than most of the planet, but it's not great that we're the only country doubling it, right? But our infant mortality has gone down, like every other country in the world except for one, who is war-torn right now, so that has nothing to do with their ability to provide medicine. So I was trying to figure out what leads to this, and it's not number of OBs per capita. It's not a lot of the things that we would assume that it would be. The thing that is most indicative of somebody having poor health outcomes is living in a state where they have less access to primary care, or the most common one is having multiple comorbidities going into pregnancy, which you're going to have in communities that don't have access to primary care, right? So being poor, being a person of color, or living in a place where you don't have access to primary care, those are the reasons that people are going to have worse maternal mortality outcomes in a state. And Florida is not doing great on any of those. So my concern for Florida was already pretty high. I don't know that this is going to help.
I was just thinking that like we should just totally dive in and not have just OB. Maybe we could delegate more of the, hospital reserved kind of departments to outside of the hospital. Like,
oh, sure. So doing not just OB outside the hospital, but doing other. Yeah.
Also,
I mean, they have surgery centers. I don't know what their scope of practice is. They do have more general surgery centers. Mm-hmm. It's just that till now, they weren't OB surgery centers. Mm-hmm. So
one thing that somebody brought up previously is that like people that were already likely to use like regular birthing centers previously are like probably going to be the ones that are more likely to use these advanced, what are we calling them? Advanced maternal care centers.
Advanced birth centers, yeah.
Advanced birth centers. But I worry that the people that are already going to use regular birthing centers, the more high-risk people of those people are going to go to the advanced birthing centers and kind of treat it like a hospital when it's not. I'd also be interested in knowing what sort of like safety measures they have in place. Like if an emergency occurred, like what would they have there? Do they have neonatologists on staff, right? Mm-hmm. Like what is there in case something happens? It's not just a helicopter, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just I feel unsure about it currently.
Yeah, like as an idea, it's nice.
Option E, needs more information.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel.
Because if you want to know how they're going to actually do the thing, like you can have we made another birthing center and it's not that great, or we have another birthing center and we've also stocked it with these resources and these connections to more resources in case the resources that they did provide are not enough, and like how much they're actually, I don't know how to say, like how they're going to actually administer it.
Yeah. I mean, the devil is always in the details, right? And I don't think we know all the details yet.
Honestly, like I started watching Call the Midwife on Netflix, and I also like really loved just like watching the whole drama of it. But they also kind of go into how like with, I don't know what they're called. I mean, like it was like a nunnery that they were working with where they have midwives like do home visits and a lot of home births, and they have like doctors on call and like hospitals connected. But a lot of the times it was like, I mean, I'm talking as if it's actual like history, but it's just a drama. But like, I'm sure that there's like systems that worked before we moved to like primarily hospital births.
Yeah, I mean, that's
coming back to
that's true. So you get
birthing.
midwives and birthing coaches and all kinds of stuff that can help mitigate those.
And a lot of like triaging beforehand to like let people know if they're higher risk and they need to do X or Y or Z.
Well, again, I think one of the concerns is that even low risk pregnancies can turn on you. Just, you know, sort of an important consideration. Yeah, you have to pre-screen people. Like, I don't think you are right for, you know, you have, you know, preeclampsia, you have, you know, gestational diabetes. You're probably not a good idea for you to come here. You know, I'm going to have to refer you to the hospital. So I'm sure that's going to happen too. But it's those cases, those sort of stealthy ones that I think a lot of people are a little worried about. Well, we have been at this, believe it or not, we've been at this for an hour and 11 minutes. Let's close it out so I can go on vacation. That's our show. Jeff, Fallon, Maddie, Julie, thanks for being a part of it.
Yay, hooray.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
And what kind of risk would I be taking if I didn't thank you, Shortcoats, for making us part of your week? If you're new and you like what you heard today, follow the show wherever fine podcasts are available. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube Music. The show is made possible by a generous donation by Carver College of Medicine Student Government and ongoing support from the Writing and Humanities program. Our music is by Dr. Vox and Catmosphere. I'm Dave Etler saying, don't let the bastards grind you down. Talk to you in 1 week. Hi, Shortcoats. Look, life in medical education, life in America, life in the world is often difficult. And I often wish I could help. All I have is this podcast, but in my wildest dreams, you have the support you need to lead a life of your choosing. You deserve to be happy, healthy, and successful in whatever ways you define those words. So if you need support because you've experienced racism, discrimination, harassment, mental health crises, I want you to be able to get the help that you need. And so I'm going to put some links in the show notes to some resources that you can use. But the bottom line is that for what it's worth, I see you. I know you're out there. I wish I could do more. Maybe I can in ways that I don't understand yet or know about. But I see you, and I'm glad you're here, and other people are too. The Shortcode Podcast is a proud member of the MedEd Media Network. Inspiration, information, and guidance on your journey to medical school and beyond at mededmedia.com.